Hi, and welcome to this Infrastructure as a Code podcast brought to you by Unix Cloud Fusion. So, infrastructure as a code is an approach for the infrastructure automation which is based on the practices similar to that of the software development. The infrastructure as a code basically emphasizes on the consistent, repeatable routines for provisioning and changing in our systems and managing of their configurations. The infrastructure as a code basically defines that any of the changes that we are going to make to the systems can be defined in the definitions and then roll out to the systems through the unattended processes that can include the thorough validation while running and implementing of those changes. It can validate those changes as well to the system. The infrastructure as a code allows for the modern tooling that can treat the infrastructure in the form of a software and the data, because it treats the systems in the form of a software, so we can apply the same principles that we apply to the software development tools. Like, we can apply the concept of the version control systems, that is your VCS, and all the changes that we are defining in our definition file, we can push that to the version control system, so that for each and every change that we are going to apply to the systems gets versioned inside the version control system. Similarly, we can apply the automated testing libraries which can automatically test all the changes that we are trying to push to the systems. And then we can apply the deployment orchestration to manage the infrastructure. Now, whenever we talk about the automated deployment, these deployments, whatever changes that we are doing, can be configured, tested, and then finally deployed onto the systems in an automated way. Once you apply this infrastructure as a code practices, you can also apply the test driven development. Then you can apply the continuous integration and the continuous deployment for the changes on your infrastructure. These are specifically useful whenever you have to apply the patches, you have to upgrade your systems, manage the various packages required by your applications. Now, the infrastructure as a code practices are in great demand and is being used by all the major companies out there, like your Amazon, Netflix, Google, Facebook, Etsy. These are some of the biggest companies to name with, but there are the smaller companies are equally using the infrastructure as a code practices for creating and managing of their IT infrastructure. Now, these IT systems are not just the applications or the systems out there. These have actually become the businesses, and there is no tolerance for the downtime. Just think about like the if there is a downtime in Amazon's or in Google for the services that they are providing, it can mean that there are millions of dollars of transactions can be affected due to that downtime. Okay, so or these since this becomes the business systems, they can't really afford the downtime, and these systems are equally scalable. That is, more and more transactions are being done on these systems, so they are keep on growing, so it becomes challenging to manage this large scale highly reliable IT infrastructure and to grow it according with the demand for this system, which is increasing day by day at a global level. So in our podcast we are going to take the advantage of this cloud era, and we are going to discuss about the infrastructure as a code approach to the IT infrastructure management. Now, going ahead, we are going to be dealing with the principles, key practices that we can apply to the infrastructure as code, and while avoiding the pitfalls that we can came across while the implementation of the infrastructure as a code practices. In our next podcast, we are going to discuss about the goals of the infrastructure as a code, okay, for an organization, and how it can help them to realize incline it with the goals of the organization. If you like this podcast, Don't forget to subscribe our channel. This is your host Ankit Mittal. Thanks for listening to this podcast.